Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. Okay, look, they can't all be good weeks. But to quote a favorite critic of mine, oftentimes the worst kind of bad is the absence of good. And the more I looked through the charts this week, the less I found anything that was all that promising. Not just in our new arrivals, but in the songs that took measurable hits. They were actually pretty good and they fell back. Now don't get me wrong, the Billboard Hot 100 has had a lot worse weeks, looked at most of last year. But if 2017 has been characterized by a noticeable positive uptick on the Hot 100, which I'd argue it has, this was not a good sign. Of course, the biggest signifier of that came in our top 10, where Bad and Bougie by Migos and Lil Uzi Vert retook the number one off of streaming gains. And look, I knew this was always going to be a margins game here, given that its sales and airplay gains have been slower. But seriously, this is nothing that Migos hasn't done dozens of times before with more energetic production and more interesting wordplay. Now, thankfully, this is still kind of a margins game, because Shape of You by Ed Sheeran is right on its tail, thanks to dominating sales, big airplay gains, considerable YouTube, and right behind it on streaming. It only lost the number one thanks to some sales ebbing off. And I think there's a very real chance that it'll take the top again thanks to the radio. On top of just being a far better song, but that's a different conversation. Now beneath all this, Black Beatles by Ray Shermer and Gucci Mane is sitting at number 3. And really, I'm thinking this will not get much further, as it's effectively falling off in every category with the exception of sales. But it's not like those are all that strong. Then we get Closer by the Chainsmokers featuring Halsey, which actually picked up to number 4, more because it's not losing as fast as other songs, courtesy of higher airplay and YouTube, which gives it some staying power, which is just wonderful. But it's also something that Starboy by The Weeknd and Daft Punk also has, but its YouTube has been a little bit weaker and it had a miserable sales week at number 5. Unfortunately, what didn't have a miserable sales week was Bad Things by Machine Gun Kelly and Camila Cabello, which rose up to number 6 thanks to being uniformly strong in all categories. As much as I can't stand this song, we might not be getting rid of it all that soon. Just joy. Now, some of you are probably wondering where Castle on the Hill, the other better Ed Sheeran song, is. Well, like I expected, it dropped out of the top 10 as the sales plummeted, but what I didn't expect was a new replacement. Yep, it's Paris by the Chainsmokers, their solo top 10 breakthrough at number 7, thanks to big sales and considerable airplay traction, which is just dandy. And to follow that, I Don't Want to Live Forever by Zayn and Taylor Swift also retook the top 10 at number 8, mostly thanks to airplay traction and sales that never quite went away. Now, I guess I'll take it over I Don't Want to Know by Maroon 5 and Kendrick Lamar muscle back to number 9, which is basically only here thanks to airplay that's rapidly diminishing its lead, but not by much. Finally, clinging on to number 10 is 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars. Basically here thanks to sales and radio that's also fading fast. It'll probably be gone soon, and that's kind of a shame. But on that topic, what about our losers and dropouts? Well, in a rare piece of kind of good news, I'm actually pretty okay with the songs that are gone. I'm not losing any sleep about Ooh by Young Ma, I Hate You, I Love You by Nash and Olivia O'Brien, May We All by Florida Georgia Line featuring Tim McGraw, or Sleep Without You by Brett Young dropping off the charts. I'm a little bit more concerned with some of our losers here. You already know that Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran fell hard to 28, but I expect with the video that just got released, it will rebound. What caught me more off guard was the losses for Parachute by Chris Stapleton down to 90, or the sudden steep drop for In the Name of Love by Martin Garrix and Bebe Rexha down to 47. Yeah, it's been around for a while, but still it's a decent song. Beyond that, our other two losers were You're Welcome by Dwayne Johnson from Moana down to 91. I'm frankly amazed it lasted this long. And Neighbors by J. Cole going down hard to 84. Similar comment with this. But okay, what are we going to be replacing these with? Well, in our returning entries, not much. Say It by Flume featuring Tove Lo recovering briefly to 94 isn't bad, but My Shit by A Boogie with the Hoodie up to 100 certainly is pretty bad. As for our gains, well, some are cases of continued momentum, like I Spy by Kyle and Lil Yachty up to 32, or Rockabye by Clean Bandit, Sean Paul and Anne-Marie up to 38, or I Got You by Bebe Rexha catching on big to 53. I'm a little bit stunned how well this is doing, to be honest. What caught me even more off guard was Call on Me by Starley, also picking up to 79. Seriously, people actually give a damn about this song? Really? Why? Similar case for Fresh Eyes by Andy Grammer picking up a late run boost to 68. Granted, it's not a bad song, but he's definitely made better tracks, and I'm surprised this picked up now. Finally, we've got Party Monster by The Weeknd picking up to 36, probably off of a video that was actually pretty damn awesome. It's not False Alarm, but between this and I Feel It Comin', the better songs from Starboy, they're actually sticking around, and that's kind of promising going forward. Of course, it becomes all the more promising when you take a look at our new arrivals in comparison. And let's just get through this, shall we? Starting off with number 99, Down by Marian Hill. You know, there's still a part of me that's kind of a little unnerved that commercials have the power to land songs in the Hot 100. But such was the power that when this was played before the Seahawks and Falcons playoff game in the NFL, it caught such attention that it wound up on the Hot 100. Now, for the majority of you who didn't know this, and I include myself in that category, Marian Hill is a duo that reportedly drew upon blues, jazz, and heavy bass to build their debut album last year, Act 1, for which I got 0 requests to cover. And while I can see some of the jazz and frontwoman Samantha Gongo's delicate vocals, the much more recognizable presence is the blocky percussion and pitch shifting playing off the prominent trap snare that operates kind of as a hook. It's not like that muted piano is adding all that much outside of some slightly higher flourishes that, yeah, they sound alright, and yet it's nowhere near as sexy as it seems to think that it is, partially because the vocals feel placed a tad too deep in the mix, partially because that jittery percussion isn't all that sensual, and partially because the main lyrical mood is frustration that they went out and now the unnamed guy isn't willing to get more into the party. Coupled with how they repeat and stutter the word down into oblivion, I can only assume the reason that this song caught on was the novelty of the commercial, because otherwise, sorry, I'm not seeing it. Number 98, Black by Dierks Bentley.
Knock me flat on my back, yeah. Just keep doing that thing you're doing there. Brush me with your hair. I swear I don't know how long that I can last. Make my world go black.
You know, I swear, at some point I'm going to start a consulting practice to go to major record labels and tell them which songs to release as singles that will end up being popular and good, especially for country, because they keep screwing this up. I didn't love either Somewhere on a Beach or Different for Girls with Elle King, but you know what? I was confident Dierks Bentley would release Man in the Moon next as a single. It's got Maren Morris, it's easily the most well-written and atmospheric and best song on that album. It had potential, even if it's not particularly country, but since when has that mattered? Nope, instead he goes to the title track that's driven far more by blurry blocks of percussion that the guitar melody is just drowned in reverb, and it actually feels like it's actively struggling for air, even on the solo. And look, I am a big fan of Dierks Bentley as a singer. His tone is solid, and if you want to make a moody sex song, I could be on board with that, even if the main conceit is that you can't see anything that he's doing because it's all pitch black. I guess I see the appeal, but there's a part of me that sees this kind of backfiring really hard. You want to see what you're doing. But beyond that, look, it's not a bad song. I can otherwise tolerate it. And if Dierks Bentley wants to keep the more atmospheric country sound pushing to the forefront, this is not a bad way to do it. But it feels like a part of me that feels like country is pivoting away from this direction, especially in the mainstream, and Dierks Bentley might regret his decision to go with this, along with the majority of that last album. Number 95, Not Nice by PARTYNEXTDOOR.
Want me to watch you do you. Don't get you look so nice, being not nice, you're rude. Look what you're putting me through. I'd never do this to you. I need to hold a corner, and it's no one time.
Okay, seriously, who still cares about PARTYNEXTDOOR? I thought we all had a meeting, I served drinks, decided that it was kind of cute for a few minutes in 2014 or 2015, that we tolerated this guy because for some reason we were giving money to anyone that Drake co-signed, and then we moved the hell on? I could have sworn that was the case, given that absolutely nobody asked me to cover that hour-long block of noise that he called a sophomore album in 2016. But apparently, Come and See Me stuck around long enough that we got a follow-up with Not Nice. And wow, if PARTYNEXTDOOR wanted to convince me that he had any personality at all, he blew it with this, which takes your standard tropical melody, your rattling tropical texture percussion, and plays off the most bare bones melody possible. And of course, he's not even trying to sound remotely engaged with this material, which if anything makes it even worse, because this is a song where he's cussing out a girl and her friend for being bad despite looking so nice. In other words, it's the light version of Drake's concern trolling, but deficient of any sort of framing or personality to excuse it. And again, I thought we moved on from this guy. If any luck holds, this will be forgotten soon enough. Number 88, Despacito by Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee.
Despacito, deja que te diga cosas al oído, para que te acuerdes si no estás conmigo. Despacito, quiero desnudarte a besos despacito, firma las paredes de tu laberinto y hacer de tu cuerpo todo un
something kind of ironic here. For as much as Pitbull has made his songs in Spanish, his biggest hits on the Hot 100 were always in English. And yet, while he can't seem to catch a break right now, we're getting some songs entirely in Spanish doing pretty well in the Hot 100, namely from this new track from Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee. Now, you probably know the latter name for some of the most asinine Latin hip-hop that's had some sporadic success in the mid-2000s and, well, now. But Luis Fonsi's been around for even longer, his first record dropping in the late 90s. Hell, he's even cracked the Hot 100 before in 2005 and 2008, but this is his biggest charting hit to date, and honestly, it's not bad at all. Sure, Daddy Yankee's braying delivery is not helping anything, but the writing is nowhere near as bad as Shaky Shaky, which plays into Fonzi's smoother, more assertive delivery. I'll give him that, he's got some charisma, and that plays well against the more prominent Spanish guitar flourishes that drive the majority of the song, even if I do think the percussion is a tad overmixed. Overall, not gonna say I love this, but when it comes to Latin pop that's on the radio right now, very listenable. I take it. I get why this guy's won Grammys, because it's a good song. Number 77, Not Afraid Anymore by Halsey.
Touch me like you never. 'Cause I am not afraid. I am not afraid anymore. No, no, no.
You know, I feel like I said this only a few weeks ago, but when you give a not particularly good featuring artist airplay, eventually the mainstream is going to ask questions about what else they've released. And that meant it was only a matter of time before Halsey got something else to chart off the success of Closer. Except in this case, it's not even a new single from an album, but another song from 50 Shades Darker, which already sent my rock bottom expectations plummeting lower. Most because sexy has never been something I've heard in her wheelhouse. And lo and behold, I was very correct in that assumption. But to be slightly fair to her, I think she was at least trying along with the writing to get there, emphasizing how she's not afraid of how dark and sinful and transgressive all this is. Oh god. Now, of course, there's no details associated with any of the writing, but at least it's in the right ballpark, which is something I cannot say about the production. It's very telling that Magic frontman Nasri Otway had his fingers in producing this and drowning the textures and reverb, even as the lumbering percussion and trap snares completely swamp out any vestige of melody. But what's more glaring is how tinny and frail the hi-hats and the clumsy as hell percussion arrangement. I get going for dark and abrasive, but this is just bad mastering, plain and simple. It doesn't work for this sort of song. In other words, I can at least give it some points for being on the right direction, but it loses all of them for completely mishandling the production and delivery. In other words, painfully mediocre. Next. Number 43, T-Shirt by Migos.
Mama 17, 5, same color T-shirt, white. Mama told me, not to sell word. Mama 17, 5, same color T-shirt. Young nigga poppin' with a pocket full of cottage. Whoa, chemo, sabit, chopper, aiming at your noggin.
Okay, same statement I made about the last song, all the more true here, except at least in this case, Migos are releasing a song from their upcoming album Culture instead of just a promotional hit from a movie that seemed destined to suck, literally and figuratively. Shame that this isn't really good either, as for some reason Migos thought that the next thing that their triplet flow needed was to be as staccato and jittery as hell. Credit to Offset, who at least tries to build more of a flow on this song, but he can't do much on the last verse with so few bars. Hell, most of the song belongs to Takeoff more than anybody, who seems to be trying to make up for not showing up on Bad and Bougie, but if anything, his deeper tone sounds even more awkward with how clipped his delivery is. And let's forget the content. Again, like most Migos songs, it's beyond help as they rap about jewelry and selling cocaine with some clumsy references. My issue comes in the production. Blubbery bass and extended warble of synth holding whatever melody that wiry low synth doesn't have, all against your standard trap beat that eventually drowns itself out in reverb. What this isn't is fun or energetic or aggressive or interesting. Maybe this comes from listening to Pusha T or even other Migos songs about slinging cocaine. If you're gonna rap about this, can you at least bring something of an aggressive edge instead of this languid, tedious drone of a tune? And as for whether it's better than Bad and Bougie, honestly, I don't like either song. Neither are good signs that Migos' upcoming record will have any spark at all, and that is the real disappointment. And finally, number 7, Paris by the Chainsmokers.
Go down together. They'll say you could do anything. They'll say that I was clever. If we go down, then we go down together. We'll get away with everything. Let's show them we are better. Let's show them we are better.
Okay, there's a pretty huge elephant in the room when it comes to the song, and believe me, we will get to it. But let me start off with the fact that I was trying to like this. There was no real breakdown that annoyed the hell out of me, no real bad tones. I like the guitar that anchors some of the melody, and for as dead-eyed as Andrew Taggart's vocals sound, it kind of makes sense within the content of the track. Of course, said content doesn't paint Taggart in a remotely good light. They're hanging out in a presumed delusion of a relationship that he knows is doomed, and he almost seems to be settling for it, the clever thing to do to snatch this girl up. And the contrast of how Emily Warren's uncredited yearning for the connection does pay off Taggart's depression in the situation reasonably well. It's framed appropriately here, even though, again, this is the Chainsmokers framing their female counterpart as not having the same perceptiveness as they do. But there are two big problems that prevent me from liking this. The first being that it's stated right on the first verse that Andrew Taggart is off getting drunk with other girls anyway already, and that's the only thing that pulls him back, is that it's not fair that she's being left behind. Kind of brushing aside the implied cheating of it all, aren't you? In a relationship that you don't even want, so why don't you just end it? But a larger problem is the obvious one. Melodically, it's a pretty shameless interpolation of M83's Midnight City, if not an outright ripoff, especially near the end of the song. At the very least, it just sounds way too close. And just like the last time on their college EP, they're giving no credit. Charming. Now that being said, this is one of the better Chainsmokers songs to come out recently, but for the most part, yeah, sorry, not doing it for me. So yeah, even despite me not feeling all that well, if you can't tell, I was not wild about our new arrivals on the charts this week as a whole, and I suspect that would have been true regardless. Best, I wouldn't say anything is great here, but Despacito by Louis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee had the most groove and organic flavor, so I'm giving it best of the week, with honorable mention to Black by Dierks Bentley, which again, not nearly the best from the album, and not really a great song, but it's at least tolerable. I can kind of get into the mood. Worst, yeah, Not Nice by PARTYNEXTDOOR takes that easily. But dishonorable mention, that's going to T-shirt by Migos for not working at all, whereas at least Halsey and the Chainsmokers have some elements that came together. Overall, not a promising week, but I expect things will kind of improve. The more boring the charts have gotten over the past year and a bit, the more likely it will be that songs with actual energy and verve will smash through. Or, at the very least, I gotta hope so. But, until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.